With us today, we have David Chang and Ying Lee, all the way from China, and we wanted to have a talk about the COVID-19 virus. And since China is, if not weeks, month ahead of what is going on right now in Denmark and the rest of Europe and the rest of the world, we wanted to have a conversation with them around what was actually going on, where are they now, and maybe also give a glimpse of as you put it, Oliver, where's the future? So with that, I would like to get started. So maybe David and Ying, you could just do a short presentation of yourself before we jump right into the questions.
Okay, Ying, you want to start first?
Okay, sure. Yeah, my name is Ying Lee, and I graduated from MIT in computer science and economics. And then worked in the Bay Area for over a dozen years for startups as well as investment companies like Kleiner Perkins. And I returned to China in 2008 to help KP set up the China office, and also co-founded Yunfeng Capital with Jack Ma, David Yu, and 20 of other top entrepreneurs in China. Right now, I'm devoting most of my time doing investments, as well as doing a fellowship at the Harvard Medical School, trying to promote the emergence of technology and healthcare and medicine. So that's basically me, and also I serve on the MIT's Dean's Advisory Board for the School of Engineering. Okay.
Thanks.
That's great. Yeah, it's me. I'm David Chan. I graduated from Cornell in computer science, undergrad and grad, and then I spent about 25 years in finance with JP Morgan in New York and BNP Paribas in Shanghai, China. And over the past few years, been fairly focused in blockchain, fintech, and Yin and I are also working pretty closely together on digital technology use case in China. And I also serve as vice president for Shanghai Blockchain Technology Association that's under the Shanghai government.
Thanks. And you were actually, both of you were actually in visiting Denmark, and when was it exactly? It was back in 2019, end of 2019, right?
Yeah, that was October.
October.
Yeah.
Little did we know.
Yep. The world changes fast.
Yeah, oh yeah. So maybe just to start with, and on a more personal level, could you maybe just start with telling a little bit about how Corona impacted you on a more personal level, and how you worked with Corona and was involved with some of the initiatives in China?
Maybe I'll jump in first. With the benefit
Yes,
of hindsight, what we're seeing now are really two different attack plans. One is in Wuhan. Obviously, that was the epicenter. That was what people are now in the Western world are doing, is to flatten the curve. And then in the rest of China is actually what has happened was try to crush the curve. So really two different action plans. And obviously me being in Shanghai, in Hangzhou, we're in part of the world that government tried to crush the plan. So i.e. Everybody is kind of quote unquote locked down in your home. Now the good thing about China is we do have a fairly, I would say fairly sophisticated, efficient e-commerce and delivery system, logistics. So in some ways, our daily life, in terms of living and having the right access to food, that has been all fine. Actually, I learned quite a bit of cooking myself. So every day we'll just order on our phone all the food that we want. some are kind of raw food, some are pre-made food or half-made food. So we order, and in the afternoon or the next day they deliver. So it was a fairly efficient system for us to kind of stay at home. And obviously for the initial phase, we couldn't go out to exercise. So basically stay at home for a month or so, probably 5 or 6 weeks. And then we can, as things kind of really pretty much under control, especially in Shanghai, in Hangzhou, or in a lot of places outside of Wuhan, the epicenter, I start to go out, for a run with my mask on. So I would say in general, we didn't, in our daily life, obviously it's different from it used to be, but, we survive, I would say not like hunker down. It's, we still enjoy our life. But in terms of work, has impacted quite a bit, especially for what we do. For instance, Beijing, the capital, is pretty much locked down, but a lot of stuff we're doing have to have those physical meetings with officials in Beijing, but that is not happening. It's difficult to have those physical meetings replaced completely by virtual meetings, because that's a big change, and so that's a challenging for example. So let me stop here. Maybe Ying has other interesting story to share.
Yeah, I think definitely more family time, because everybody is stuck at home. And a lot more time using the phone or watching movies over the internet. So I think there are, industries definitely impacted. For example, we can't go out to eat anymore. So I think essentially all of our cooking skill improved dramatically. And also I think the coronavirus, because there are a lot of social support and people volunteering. For example, a lot of the classes used to charge now became free for students, for adults, for like AI related, even exercises class, different things you could do to improve your soccer game at home. So there are a lot of freebies out there that, to help people spend time more effectively and improving themselves while staying at home. So I thought that was a good experience. I think even, although the in-person meeting got canceled, but a lot of friends around the world reached out to ask if, we're doing okay. So that was nice, because before, if there's nothing, then some people we almost, didn't get in touch for years. I even forgot about them until, this happened. So I think it was a very interesting period. And everybody is, focused on the news, seeing how many new cases are happening, and try to help people around us. And also, I think it was very, nice to see even friends from the US, from other countries, were trying to help by sending us masks and other sanitizers to help us become, better fight the virus. And of course, little did we know, nowadays, I've been spending a lot of time also helping other friends globally to help them get the masks and testing kits, etc. Because we've already been through this process, and most of the factories are now back to, if not over, but normal capacity, especially for some of these manufacturing plants that's related to this pandemic.
And I know, David, you're in Shanghai. Where is it you're located in?
Oh, I'm located in Hangzhou, which is about an hour by train from Shanghai. And it's also the headquarters for Alibaba.
And both cities were completely shut down?
Yeah, the shutdown in Wuhan is very severe, right? So you really cannot leave. No cars allowed. They block the highway, stop the air travel, basically quote unquote lock everybody up in your community. You just cannot go out. Even for people who are sick, if you need medicine, they have people deliver medicine to your apartments. So you cannot leave. No one can leave. But in Shanghai, I would say probably the same as Hangzhou. We are locked in our community, in our residential community, so we can still walk around within the community, but we cannot go outside of the community. And people from my neighbor community or neighboring residential complex cannot visit me, so I cannot go there. So I don't have to, in Shanghai, or probably the same as in Hangzhou, I can leave my house, but only with my residential complex. So that was during the most severe, quote unquote, lockdown, those 6 weeks, I believe. But as Ying was saying, I benefit from distance learning. As Ying was saying, a lot of the leading experts in China are offering free lectures on their field. So I always wanted to learn the history of neuroscience. So this leading figure who was the leader of the China Brain Initiative for the country, so he offered 10 lectures on neuroscience.
How's life right now? So is it back to somewhat of a normal situation, or how is it like now?
I just went out for a meeting this afternoon in Shanghai. I took the subway. Everybody was wearing masks, but it was all fine except wearing masks. It was all fine. I was meeting someone at a hotel cafe, so we're talking. So life is almost as normal as it can be. People obviously are paying a lot more attention to personal hygiene, keeping distance, no shaking hands, no touching face, all that stuff. So, otherwise it's kind of normal. Yeah. Traffic is 90% normal.
Yeah, unfortunately, I agree. I think also since it's technology related, I think that really helped a lot in getting us returning back to normal, because now I know in Shanghai and Hangzhou and a lot of the other cities as well, everybody has this green code. That means that you are free to go to most of the public places. But if the code is red, then usually you need to stay home, because everybody checks the code to make sure it's green. So then, people know it's safe. So this technology is offered by Ali Cloud and Financial. That was instrumental. And also governments were giving out consumer vouchers to help people stimulate the economy via Alipay and WeChat Pay as well. So I think those are very helpful solutions. And like the Zoom in the US right now, Ding Ding, which is also a chat video conferencing, work software developed by Alibaba. It was offered for free during the whole pandemic to not just China, but I think they're offering it globally as well. And that was helpful in conducting meetings online. And also a lot of the classes are actually offered on Ding Ding, and Ali was able to offer it for free to a lot of the schools and students. So although, definitely the kids are not as disciplined, but they also have this capability to replay the class. So sometimes I think it takes a lot of work for the parents to make sure that, to make sure the kids get what the teachers are trying to teach them. So I think the whole technology solution played a very important role to help us get back to work without being too exposed for people who have red code by being exposed to, affected or screening positive people, or have returned from infected areas. So then we know wherever we go, because most places check for the green code. Those are people that are safe.
So the red code you get from being in an infected area or from being infected yourself, and then you get that code.
Yeah, so several ways. If you're infected yourself, then definitely it's a red code. And after you turn red, then it'll check all the people around you and places you've been to. And through the GPS, I think they can locate who else are very close to you for a period of time. Then their code would turn red as well until they, get screened themselves. And then in that case, that might turn yellow or green.
All right, so
So
that's
it's a very intelligent system.
Right. So just to add on, so what you were saying, so in this case, Ali's technology plus mobile carrier. So if I were infected, so the Ali, and I use Alipay to, if I get on a taxi, then to go to shopping mall, if I were infected, the Ali system of Alipay will find out all the transaction that happened by me at what location, and then the mobile carrier is providing data on everyone who's been there. So in terms of contact tracing was very efficient, can quickly locate all those people in close proximity, and then can quickly lock them down and isolate them.
And when did that's super interesting, because that's something we're also talking about in Denmark right now. How fast were these kind of solutions implemented?
Well, I was just chatting with them yesterday, and they worked overnight and developed the whole system in 3 days. So the government could use it. So I think, yeah. So they put all their engineers, stopped all other projects to work on this. We've been using it for 5 weeks at least. I think even since early February. I need to check the date, because it's been with us for quite some weeks.
Right. Yeah. It's almost at the start of the kind of quote unquote lockdown. We have this system of contact tracing. It was very efficient, combining the mobile carrier, the Alipay. So it was very, very efficient.
Cool. And is there any other, because of course that's what we're super interested in here, is what other tech solutions, or also within the fintech, but also tech in general, other tech solutions that were put in place in order to fight the virus or the spread of the virus?
What I see, obviously Ying knows a lot more about this. What I see is obviously a lot of data visualization. Once you get the data from mobile carrier, from Alipay, then different technology platform, even from different universities like Peking University or Tsinghua University, those leading universities, big data lab, they start producing visualization to really help local governments to see, which area has what concentration, which area has a lot of green. So, and I think that the beginning is more for containment, and then later on becoming a great tool for returning to work.
Yeah, I think so. That's right. The big data and also blockchain was used to help different hospitals and research group around China to collaborate. So that was very exciting because so there aren't a lot of economics associated with the data exchange, because it's during the pandemic and people are just trying to collaborate and get more information on cases in other places across the nation. But definitely blockchain technology was used as well to enable data exchange. And David and I are trying to get international data collaboration as people are interested in the historical data from China to try to estimate based on what we've seen in China already to their current situation, and see where the progression may go.
I was curious a little bit, where do most of these solutions come from? So you mentioned Alipay. Where do the tech solutions come from? Is it from the big tech players? Is it from entrepreneurs, universities, or?
I think the nationwide solutions are probably from a lot of the big players like Alibaba or Tencent. But for a lot of these other more vertical solutions, like the blockchain solution I was talking about, it actually came from a startup that was in Hangzhou called Shunyo. which is affiliated with Chulian, a leading blockchain
Hyperchain.
company.
Yeah, Hyperchain.
Yeah, Hyperchain. Yes.
I would say my experience and from what I observed when government said, hey, we're gonna release this, color code, everybody's gonna follow that, everybody's gonna download that app on your phone, so that people can know what color of your house is, and then you will be tracked. And I think people are very receptive, and people say, hey, that's what's needed to contain the spread of the virus, so we should all follow the rule. And I'll say that was a very, very well understood, and there's really no complaints. People just accept it. That's what we need to do. Ian, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think the government did a very good job in publicizing and telling people why they're doing this, in tracking people's location, because it's also in our interest to know whether we've been exposed to people who have the virus. Because if we did, then we don't want to go home and infect our loved ones. So I think, they did a good job communicating that. And because during the pandemic, we understand it is to everybody's best interest in following or cooperating. So I think that was not about, they're not leveraging this opportunity, try to take advantage of our personal data. And at that time, I think it's very special situation. But of course, after the pandemic, I think, things should go back to normal, where anonymized data or desensitized data can only be shared and has to be encrypted for medical use or for any other big data analysis that people wants to do. But during the pandemic, I think people are okay because we understood that everybody have the same goal of controlling or flattening the curve or controlling the spread.
Would you go so far as to say that some of these tech solutions were actually the main reasons for the virus not spreading more?
Yes, I think those are definitely very important ones. And in addition to that, I would add traditional Chinese medicine as well, because traditional Chinese medicine is known to help balance people's internal body, and which helps strengthen the immune system as a result. So there are cases in Wuhan, before everybody used TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, as the standard of care, the death rates and people from light symptom to severe symptoms were very high. But after TCM was introduced as the standard of care, the rate dropped dramatically. And in a lot of the provinces where TCM played a very important role in the prevention, the cases were actually much lower than provinces where TCM was a minor part or not as treated as a important step in the whole standard of care. There are anecdotal evidences because we didn't have time during the pandemic to do very structured, controlled, randomized trials. But anecdotally, the effectiveness is in the above 90% for a number of different provinces. So TCM is a group of different herbs combined together, and you can take it by boiling it in a pot, or there are granular forms as well. You can just, it's just like a tea bag. You put in with some hot water and then you drink it. So it's, you can consider as a special herbal tea.
So just to, I think, when you ask what was China's experience in containing this, where the number of deaths is so low, I think in addition to what you were saying about the Chinese medicine as a therapeutic cure, the other 2 points are what we talk about: very efficient contact tracing and very restrictive human movements.
Yeah.
So you really have to do 3 of them in a very, very strong, enforceable manner. So we can crush the curve, keep the death rate very low, keep the number of deaths very low, keep the number of infection very, very low outside of the epicenter.
I think
you had a question, Omar?
Yeah, I was just curious a little bit. We talked about how tech solutions help limit the spread of the disease. but then there's also the whole economy and the small businesses and startups, you know. Was there any tech solutions that helped to relieve like the economic pressures by the crisis, you know, new way of financing or supporting small companies and entrepreneurs and these kind of things? It'd be interesting to see what kind of support packages was put together.
There are a number of those in terms of, you know, reduce, you know, in terms of tax rebates, kind of special fund loan packages that you can access to. So that there are quite a number of them. But what I want to point out is one kind of example how small business adapt in this environment. Obviously, in this environment, government asks restaurants not to open, right? Because to limit people movement, to limit people get too close together. So all the restaurants are losing business from, you know, people going there. But then what they found out was a lot of restaurants quickly turn themselves into central kitchen because people stay at home. People don't want to cook, become a chef like myself. So they want to order, given how efficient the delivery system that we have. So we see a lot of restaurants are surviving, becoming a central kitchen in my neighborhood. I'm not sure what was Ying's experience from that, but that to me was a good example of quickly adapt to the environment for that number of months to survive, in addition to getting the government's help.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think the government was very efficient in organizing a team of volunteers to make sure all the ports or entries are checked for the green code to ensure everybody's safety. And also, I think a lot of the government properties, the rents are waived during the pandemic times to help people alleviate the pressure. But I think it really depends on which industries you're talking about. Because, for example, online learning actually grew 3 to 10 times, depending on which company you're looking at during the pandemic. Same as, you know, you saw the Zoom stock just went over the roof. So there are industries where I think also it's more futuristic, but they enjoyed benefit of people staying at home and have more time to spend online. So those industries are growing, you know, much faster than normally they would expect. Without the pandemic. And for the ones that are infected, I think most of the restaurants are back to business. For example, this last weekend, I went to the restaurants and they were pretty full. And so I think a lot of people are just they miss the restaurant so much. So once they can go out, a lot of people went out immediately. So the malls are, I would say, probably even more crowded than before.
Yeah, during the lockdown, China has a number of those logistic companies. One delivery company hired 300,000 people because the online order was like,
yeah, that's true.
Jumped so much. They had to hire 300,000 people. 300,000, yeah, just from one company, one delivery company. There are 4 or 5 of those.
Right. So both of you are quite close to the tech ecosystem in China. What did you experience? What is the impact on the kind of the tech startup ecosystem in China of this pandemic in general? But also, I think one thing that we're experiencing here in Denmark and in Europe in general, you know, especially the funding situation is, you know, there's a lot of startups really struggling right now because everything is freezing. So what did you experience, or what do you experience in China right now?
I would say for the tech startup, we even before the pandemic, we are pretty used to working in a distributed fashion, working, you know, virtual meetings. So that part doesn't really impact much. But obviously, a lot of the small companies, tech companies, facing revenue issues. So government rolled out special grants. There's, you know, kind of special loans or even for local governments are now, sorry, not local, for banks, not local governments. Local banks are not allowed to terminate the loan. They have to extend the loan. So for any loans they have outstanding with small business, they have to extend the loan. So a lot of those really helping them. But giving, obviously, with the benefit of hindsight, our lockdown was really, 4 to 6 weeks. So after that, things gradually back to normal. Start with 30% normal, 50% normal. Right now, I would say 80 to 90% normal. Right now, I think the challenge is mostly from outside of China, who are now has to do with the supply chain. So I would say during the Chinese lockdown, a lot of, let's say, car companies, let's say Daimler, with the automaker, they couldn't get parts from China because the Chinese factory was shut down. But now it's the Chinese factory couldn't get an order from the Western world. So that's obviously impacting those business. But if you are a business that's mostly domestic, i.e. providing services for domestic markets, I would say you are almost back to normal. But if you are a Chinese business that's counting on international order, obviously, that's pretty painful right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think in the startup circle, definitely those who have money has a much bigger advantage over people who are trying to raise money, because the pandemic just takes a halt on all the fund investment activities in China. And now it's slowly coming back. But I think still it's harder for companies, especially the ones that need to burn a lot of money, to raise at a reasonable valuation. And I think there are some valuation adjustments as well. And with the pandemic, there are new interests in bio or pandemic-related opportunities, in antibodies or special materials, and things where, before it's not a huge opportunity, but because of the pandemic, I think there are new interests and some new funds are created to help cope with future potential, pandemic-like situations. So I think, it's definitely a time to conserve capital and to really find good business models. And if you have money, great. And it's definitely a time to hire people at a more reasonable salary compared to, when the economy is without any uncertainties.
I would say, I'll offer another angle. I would say this pandemic really expose issues, problem in terms of governance, social governance. So where obviously government has seen how digital technology is helping governance on a society level. And I think that's why China is rolling out new infrastructure plan, which is targeting for digital technology in 5G, in blockchain, in big data. So all of those things that I would say before pandemic, it will be difficult to do all of them in one fell swoop, right? Because there are so many competing priorities. Why we should focus on this, not other stuff. But now people realize it is so important to have the digital infrastructure ready so that we will be prepared if there's a next pandemic happening. So that to me creates a great opportunity if we look ahead post-pandemic. There will be so many opportunities for SME, for technology founders to build interesting applications on this new infrastructure.
So it actually accelerates some of the digital initiatives on a country level.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
But how do you see China as a whole bounce back from Corona, and and now going into something that we now talk about as almost being normal. What do you experience as normal now? What are we to look forward to, so to speak? What is the new normal? How does that work in China? What is the new normal in China right now?
I would say the new normal, I mean, obviously there are still a lot of uncertainties because we don't really live, China is not by itself. We're living in this global community. So there's a lot of unknowns that we still need to, needs to be discovered. But I think a couple of things are fairly clear to me. One, obviously, in terms of personal hygiene, for instance, Chinese people, when we meet together, we tend to share from the common dish, right? So that is changing. So people are now more cautious. Probably that's some personal hygiene habits are changing. That's one. Second, obviously, bio readiness. I would say every country, including China, are focusing a lot more on bio readiness. So biotech will be an important industry, even more important than before. I mean, before pandemic, but biotech was very hot. I would say post-pandemic, biotech will be even harder. I mean, there'll be a lot of money going in there as well. But associated with that is all the technology can make biotech or bioengineering even move faster. AI, digital tech, and all the stuff that can help that happen. And last but not least, I would say 5G is really important because if you look at our experience during pandemic to doing everything online, there's a lot of issues with online, even with Tencent rolled out their Tencent meeting, but the Tencent meeting quickly crashed because when they didn't expect so many people using them, so crashed a number of times. So now if we can quickly install 5G, and I think make virtual meeting, virtual working, remote working even more efficient. So that's what we see kind of maybe some of the new normals. Ying probably has a lot more to offer. To us is, obviously this pandemic, I mean, obviously China, happened in China, so we have a bit more experience because it happened first. We probably have a couple of weeks or maybe a month ahead of the Western world. So that's why it is important for China to share their experience. How do we contain in terms of crushing the curve or flatten the curve, even, and as Ying was saying, the Chinese medicine experience, all of those things should be shared. A lot of our data, that we should be able to share. So that's happening as we speak. So we actually want, unfortunately, the latecomer to this to be able to crush your curve and flatten your curve as quickly as you can.
Yeah, so I think definitely the pandemic gave us a very good start in encouraging the collaboration among scientists, medical professionals, both within the country as well as across the world. So now the data desensitized and encrypted data can be shared, but I think there are a lot more that needs to be done. For example, during the pandemic, nobody wants to charge for those data, right? But then going forward, once this pipeline is built, that the data are able to flow, what kind of incentive system can we build in to encourage people to share data? And let's say if something comes out from the data that people were collaborating on, what are the schemes to help people make sure that how much contribution a way to measure their amount of contribution to the result and their payback, either in terms of monetary value or other in-kind data sharing or access grants can be made. So I think it's a very exciting opportunity. The door is now kind of opened. But then there are a lot more other things that we should build around to make it a better system after post-pandemic.
And also, I think we all observe, I mean, obviously this is an unprecedented pandemic. You know, last time was 100 years ago. Obviously, the world was not ready. And you observe is, you know, every country was fighting for themselves, tried to get all the medical supply, the protective gears ready. I think, you know, post-pandemic, we should have a kind of a rethinking about how do we globally coordinate those protective goods so that we don't, you know, fight out, each country fighting becomes a very inefficient system, try to get those goods. So instead of making the disruptive change to supply chain, which will be very costly to every country involved, right? Raising cost level, raising price, and shrinking profits for a whole economy. We should coordinate. Maybe the next G20 should discuss how do we have a mechanism to coordinate all those things if those unfortunate things happen. We can coordinate better than just shifting supply chains. You know, supply chain is difficult to shift.
I was just thinking about what you said before about returning to the new normal a little bit. You know, there's been some discussions on, you know, what is this stickiness of these kind of pandemic solutions. So, you know, we do remote learning, we do virtual Zoom meetings, you know, 100% Zoom meetings gets a bit tiresome after a while, and then the whole privacy part you know, like, how has it been for you coming out on the other end? You know, what's been the stickiness of the, you know, pandemic life versus new normal?
I would say in terms of, you know, we work with, Ying is obviously a big promoter of distributed working and remote meetings. So every time I say, Ying, let's meet in person, Ying say, you know what, let's just do it on WeChat. So we are already living in a new.
We're ahead of the curve, right?
We are, you know, we do mostly WeChat meetings already. Obviously, this is a great experiment globally, so I would say definitely a lot more virtual meetings happening. Probably not that good for commercial real estate, but you know.
Yeah, so I think after the pandemic, you know, we definitely won't do as many Zoom or online meetings, but we would do more than just before the pandemic, because now people realize that, hey, actually a lot of those meetings doesn't need to happen in person, and it can be just as effective, which I think is a plus. And also back to the online learning, we won't have as much time learning online anymore. So I think to select very diligently which are the good online classes that we should take post-pandemic in both either online plus offline format or offline and or you know, still online format. And I was surprised, actually, a lot of these even sports can be learned online. So I think that's a good supplement. It's very complementary to what people can do, you know, after the training in a group setting, that they can practice some of the drills at home as well.
And Thomas and Oliver, if I were an entrepreneur to start out now, looking at problem to solve, I would say this is like the best time, because the world being forced to live online, and by doing this experiment, we expose so many problems with our current technology, right? So you can do a list of all the issues that being exposed, and if you want to start out now, you can just go attack those issues, because you will never get a chance to do such a big worldwide survey on how each technology works, right? Because it was almost impossible for you to do a survey like that. Now the world has done a survey for you. What has worked, what has not worked. And I'm pretty sure the world we're living in post-pandemic is going to be more virtual. So there are so many issues that you can solve. So the product market fit is pretty easy to identify.
Thank you so much for sharing some of your experiences, both on a personal level and some of your reflections on this pandemic.